that we sent to your battlefield.
Silence, a truce to the ills that are past.
Then in the glory and grace of our womanhood, all in the May and the morning of life, lo, we are sitting forlorn and disconsolate. What is a soldier to do with a wife? We might endure it. But for the younger ones, still in their maiden apartments they stay, waiting the husband that never approaches them, watching the years that are gliding away.
Men, I suppose, have their youth everlastingly.
Nay, but it isn't the same with a man. Gray though he be when he comes from the battlefield, still, if he wishes to marry, he can. Brief is the spring and the flower of our womanhood. Once let it slip, and it comes not again. Sit as we may with our spells and our auguries, never a husband will marry us then.
With the red badge of courage, Stephen Crane has handed down to us the most detailed and realistic account of the American Civil War, a war which, paradoxically enough, the author never witnessed.
The youth stared at the land in front of him. Its foliage now seemed to veil powers and horrors. He was unaware of the machinery of orders that started the charge, although from the corners of his eyes he saw an officer who looked like a boy, a horseback, come galloping, waving his hat. Suddenly he felt a straining and heaving among the men. The line fell slowly forward like a toppling wall, and with a convulsive gasp that was intended for a cheer, the regiment began its journey. The youth was pushed and jostled for a moment before he understood the movement at all, but directly he lunged ahead and began to run. He fixed his eye upon a distant and prominent clump of trees where he had concluded the enemy were to be met, and he ran toward it as toward a goal. He had believed throughout that it was a mere question of getting over an unpleasant matter as quickly as possible, and he ran desperately, as if pursued for a murder. His face was drawn hard and tight with the stress of his endeavor. His eyes were fixed in a lurid glare, and with his soiled and disordered dress, his red and inflamed features surmounted by the dingy rag with its spot of blood, his wildly swinging rifle and banging accoutrements, he looked to be an insane soldier. As the regiment swung from its position out into a cleared space, the woods and thickets before it awakened. Yellow flames leaped toward it from many directions. The forest made a tremendous objection. The line lurched straight for a moment, then the right wing swung forward. It, in turn, was surpassed by the left. Afterward, the center careered to the front until the regiment was a wedge-shaped mass. But an instant later, the opposition of the brushes and trees and uneven places on the ground split the command and scattered it into detached clusters. The song of the bullets was in the air, and shells snarled among the treetops. One tumbled directly into the middle of a hurrying group and exploded in crimson fury. There was an instant's spectacle of a man, almost over it, throwing up his hands to shield his eyes. Other men, punched by bullets, fell in grotesque agonies. The regiment left a coherent trail of bodies. It seemed to the youth that he saw everything. Each blade of the green grass was bold and clear. He thought that he was aware of every change in the thin, transparent vapor that floated idly in the sheets. The brown or gray trunks of the trees showed each roughness of their surfaces. And the men of the regiment, with their starting eyes and sweating faces, running madly or falling as if thrown headlong to queer, heaped-up corpses, all were comprehended. His mind took a mechanical but firm impression, so that afterward everything was pictured and explained to him, save why he himself was there.
And Walt Whitman, news correspondent in that war, asked, "Who suffers?"
I saw the vision of armies, and I saw, as in noiseless dreams, hundreds of battle flags. Borne through the smoke of the battles and pierced with missiles, I saw them, and carried hither and yon through the smoke, and torn and bloody, and at last but a few shreds of the flags left on the staffs. and all in silence, and the staffs all splintered and broken. I saw battle corpses, myriads of them, and the white skeletons of young men. I saw them. I saw the debris and debris of all dead soldiers. But I saw they were not as was thought. They themselves were fully at rest. They suffered not. The living remained and suffered. The mother suffered, and the wife and the child, and the musing comrade suffered, and the armies that remained suffered.
In a short story called War, the Italian dramatist Luigi Pirandello expressed the power of non-reason in our lives.
The passengers who had left Rome by the night express had to stop until dawn at the small station of Fabriano in order to continue their journey by the small, old-fashioned local joining the main line with Sulmona. At dawn, in a stuffy and smoky second-class carriage in which 5 people had already spent the night, a bulky woman in deep mourning was hoisted in, almost like a shapeless bundle. Behind her, puffing and moaning, followed her husband, a tiny man, thin and weakly, his face death-white, his eyes small and bright, and looking shy and uneasy. Having at last taken his seat, he politely thanked the passengers who had helped his wife and who had made room for her, and then he turned round to the woman trying to pull down the collar of her coat and politely inquired, "Are you, all right, dear?" The wife, instead of answering, pulled up her collar again to her eyes as to hide her face. "It's a nasty world," muttered the husband with a sad smile. And he felt it his duty to explain to his traveling companions that the poor woman was to be pitied, for the war was taking away from her her only son, a boy of 20 to whom both had devoted their entire life, even breaking up their home at Sulmona to follow him to Rome, where he had to go as a student, then allowing him to volunteer for war with an assurance, however, that at least for 6 months he would not be sent to the front. And now, all of a sudden, receiving a wire saying that he was due to leave in 3 days' time and asking them to go and see him off. The woman under the big coat was twisting and wriggling, at times growling like a wild animal, feeling certain that all those explanations would not have aroused even a shadow of sympathy from those people who, most likely, were in the same plight as herself. One of them, who had been listening with particular attention, said, "You should thank God that your son is only leaving now for the front. Mine has been sent there the first day of the war. He has already come back twice wounded and been sent back again to the front." "Well, what about me? I have 2 sons and 3 nephews at the front," said another passenger. "Well, maybe, but in our case, it's our only son," ventured the husband. "Well, what difference can it make? You may spoil your only son with excessive attentions, but you cannot love him more than you would all your other children if you had any. Paternal love is not like the bread that can be broken into pieces and split amongst the children in equal shares. The father gives all his love to each one of his children without discrimination, whether it be 1 or 10. And if I am suffering now for my 2 sons, I'm not suffering half for each of them, but double." "True. It's true," sighed the embarrassed husband. "But suppose, of course we all hope it will never be your case. Suppose a father has 2 sons at the front, and he loses one of them. There is still one left to console him. While, yes," answered the other, getting cross. "A son left to console him, but also a son left for whom he must survive. While in the case of the father of an only son, if the son dies, the father can die too and put an end to his distress. Which of the 2 positions is the worse? Huh?" Don't you see how my case would be worse than yours?
No.